of England has stepped in again with more measures to try and calm markets. The move is in response to soaring UK bond yields. The central bank says it's widening the scope of daily purchases of UK government bonds or gilts until the end of this week. According to the BoE, the latest action will act as a further backstop to restore orderly market conditions. On Monday, the UK government borrowing costs jumped after the bank increased the amount of bonds it was buying before its scheme ends. The BoE hopes the latest action will protect the debt market from dysfunction. Meanwhile, the United Kingdom's unemployment rate has dropped to 3.5% in the 3 months to August. That's the lowest since 1974. However, wages continue to lag behind inflation. On Monday, the British government brought forward the date of key economic forecasts to Halloween, hoping to be able to reassure markets. On October the 31st, Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng will unveil debt reduction plans and those independent economic predictions. For more on this, WION's business editor Sumit Chaturvedi joins me live from New Delhi. Sumit, explain to me exactly what the Bank of England is trying to achieve with this latest intervention.
Well, Ollie, these are fresh emergency moves by the Bank of England, and these are new interventions in the bond market specifically. Now, the actions are aimed at bringing calm to markets. Now, $10 billion worth of bonds will be bought in every day. That's the figure according to which BoE will go and buy bonds. BoE also said there are risks to financial stability and the bond yields are soaring. While the pound crashed last week, this all happened when overall the unplanned tax cuts were announced by UK Chancellor, which were rolled back. Bank of England also said this is being done to restore orderly market conditions, and it is widening the scope of daily purchase of bonds. Through bonds, government raises money from investors, and after mini budget, many investors actually in UK began demanding high interest rates, and government borrowing costs then surged. Now, government has assured that pensions are safe. It has also said banks are independent from government and they are bringing stability to markets. So these steps are being taken now, one after the other, to bring stability to the markets, because in the light of growing inflation, growing geopolitical risks like Ukraine and Russia, these steps are important, and UK being at the forefront of this fight against inflation. Winters are coming, the cost for living will increase in UK. All these steps have been now taken to bring the stability to markets, financial stability to markets. That was said by UK today, UK's BoE today. Unemployment, as we said, that it's lowest since 1974, and they are not looking for job increase. Average earning growth are up 5.4%. So that's how overall situation in UK looks like, and that's why these interventions are being made frequently by Bank of England, Central Bank of UK.
Sumit, thank you. And for more, we can also talk to Craig Earlham, Senior Market Analyst at Oanda, who's joining me live from London. Craig, thanks for being with us. Explain the difference in this latest intervention by the Bank of England from the previous round of bond buying that it had already announced.
So the difference is minor. It includes index-linked gilts, so that is tracking inflation. It's also now being extended to a certain extent, not under the initial terms of the programme, but to ensure that pension funds have access to additional liquidity up until the end of the month, when the Chancellor will announce the full budget with the independent OBR forecast. It's effectively just a plumbing issue ultimately for the markets, ensuring ample liquidity. Occasionally we can see dysfunction in markets when you do see shock moves or when you do see shock events, and we've very much seen that over the course of the last couple of weeks, and central banks then intervene in order to try and sustain them. Ordinarily, these shock movements happen on the basis of something unexpected or something that can't be controlled. This has been very much a self-inflicted wound because of the government's determination to announce spending measures without announcing corresponding revenue generation measures or independent forecasts. So these are just intended to tide the UK over effectively until the end of the month and ensure that liquidity remains ample and pension funds remain stable. I expect there'll probably be more tweaks over the course of the coming weeks in order to address issues as they emerge. And the hope then being that after the end of the month, when we do get the full budget, that they won't be necessary. But again, there's a lot of people who are sceptical because of what has been talked about by the government over the course of the last couple of weeks, that the markets simply aren't going to be satisfied with what they come up with later on.
And Craig, why have the moves in the bond market when it comes to the UK created such concern about the pension sector in particular?
So this is to do with products which pension funds use in order to try and manage normal market volatility and also to ensure that their liabilities are met. And these are products which have been used for a very long time and have been relatively stable. But with all products in the markets, there does come risk when you do see extraordinary movements that they will become vulnerable. And this is where we can see central banks step in. We'll remember early in the pandemic, the Fed stepped in on a number of occasions to shore up certain parts of the market in order to ensure ample liquidity and ensure the smooth functioning of financial markets. That's what the Bank of England has been forced to do now in order to stop pension funds becoming unstable. What effectively happened was because the movements that happened to such a degree meant that pension funds were seeing margin calls, and margin calls meant that the pension funds themselves had to come up with additional collateral in order to meet these margin calls. Now, this came initially from selling government bonds, but the problem is when you're selling government bonds on such large scale, then that leads to the price falling and the yields rising, and then that incurs further costs as a result of these liability products, which means that these pension funds have to further sell. This becomes a doom loop in the markets. This means that yields continue to rise because more and more bonds are having to be sold in order to meet those margin requirements, and that is what the central bank sought to diffuse, providing liquidity in the markets, ensuring that yields did not spike as a result of this technical issue, and ensure that fair prices remain. This was initially confused with the kind of bond buying we've seen from central banks around the world over the course of the last 15 years, but the Bank of England has sought to ensure that people do not confuse the two. This is a temporary problem that had materialised in the markets that the Bank of England has sought to buy time for in order to allow it to settle down. This is not bond buying, it's not stimulus, and it's not an attempt to manipulate rates lower. This is a temporary plumbing issue that has been resolved by the Bank of England, and the hope will be that after the end of the month it won't be required anymore.
And Craig, what's your interpretation of that jobs data from the UK? Because the headline seems positive with the rate at a multi-decade low, but it's more complicated than that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's far more complicated than that. It's an issue that's a phenomenon, really, that is facing much of the world right now. The pandemic led to a lot of job cuts after furlough schemes came to an end. And in the aftermath of that, when the economy bounced back stronger than many anticipated, a lot of these companies found it very difficult to replace those workers and had to spend a lot of time, effort and money in order to hire staff. Well, even today, we see a report from the CBI that suggested that companies are still complaining about the fact that there is a lack of qualified labour, even at this point in time. What that means now going forward is the Bank of England's job has become that much harder. Companies may be implementing hiring freezes because because of the uncertain environment and the lack of a desire to invest. But what they're not doing very quickly in response to higher interest rates and a more dire economic outlook is letting workers go. Now, no one wants to be let go. Households, I'm sure, will be comforted by the latest jobs report, but it does make the Bank of England's job that much harder. By not letting workers go, that slack that the Bank of England needs to see in the labour market to lead to more sustainable lower wages and lower inflation and less bargaining power ultimately is not appearing. It's going to take a lot longer, it seems, for that to appear, which means the Bank of England may have to work that much harder. So from a household's perspective in the short term, lower unemployment, higher wages is a positive thing, but from the Bank of England's perspective, it makes their job that much more difficult. The other thing that needs to be pointed out from this jobs report is while 6% wage growth, including bonuses, is it is fundamentally, or appears on the face of it to be fundamentally strong and encouraging when inflation is running at close to 10%. That's effectively a 4% wage decrease in real terms on an annual basis. And that's why households are continuing to feel the pinch, even if those wage growth numbers look strong on the face of it.
Craig Erlam, thank you.
Thank you.